The technical part today is basically introducing a process for channel assessment where we don't have regional curves or where we have a hard time understanding how big a channel should be or how wide a channel should be. And this question came out of a discussion with Brad, and I will let Brad add into this after I talk for a minute, half a minute, so that he knows he's warned that he can add into this. In talking to Brad in Canada, they're trying to figure out how to do habitat compensation. A lot of their habitat compensation is based on a plan form area. So they'll say we have a 2-acre pond that we need to put in a habitat pond for, but they may put that in on a creek that cannot support a 2-acre pond, either from water issues, water availability issues, or from stream stability issues. So there's not a whole lot of regional curves in Canada, and we want to figure out a way to try to take habitat compensation from an area basis to linear foot basis on these projects. Is there anything else that you want to add related to the problem statement, Brad? I kind of surprised you this morning, so.
Yeah, no, it's actually, I'd like to clarify a little bit. It's basically the issue arose out of the fact that they do focus on area rather than linear feet or volume, which would be actually, volume would probably be the best because it's 3 dimensions and the 3 dimensions account for habitat for fish best. The problem is that in order to do, to generate uplift between an existing degraded channel and a new channel is the fact that in many cases the existing channel may be over widened if it's in an urban area. And so we need to find a way to normalize the width of the existing channel. Otherwise, if you calculate it based on the area of the channel, so you basically consider a whole bunch of variables to determine how good a fish habitat it is, and then you multiply that by the area of the channel. Well, in most cases, degraded channels are wider, in most cases, wider than stable channels. And so you wind up with an overestimate of the amount of habitat that exists in the degraded channel by virtue of the fact that it may be over widened. So I was looking for a way to normalize those over widened channels back down to what their proper width should be. So that's kind of, does that ruin your talk, Dave, or does that still work?
No, that still works for the talk.
Okay.
Cool.
Essentially,
it's the same thing. It's a little bit difference in my understanding of it. So, so what we're going to work with is there's a lack of regional curves in Canada, and there's other places in the U.S. where there's a lack of regional curves. And then there's a channel dimension that we're trying to get at, and we want to do this for stability assessment and habitat comparisons. So the first things we need to start with is rainfall on a valley slope, and we discussed this on one of our talks before. We talked about the watershed response factor, and we're going to use this as a means of geomorphic assessment and stability. So last week we went out to Bruco Canyon with George Kelly in California, and we're looking at ideas of potential mitigation sites for Orange County, California, and we identified some bankful features, and we had Bassett look at these bankful calls and compare them to regional curves. And what we generally do is we look at all the regional curves for an area. If we think that they could kind of be the same, and this is in California, we pull them all together, publish them, and then plot our points where we identified bankful in the field on these. And sometimes they fall below the curve, sometimes they fall above the curves. And we use this as an assessment tool to say, okay, well, it seems below the curve. Is there a reason why it's below the curve? Is there a reason why it's above the curve? But as we talked about before with the watershed response factor, can we start predicting a regional curve based on more simplified information? So maybe just based on, you know, could we look at a regional curve and look at rainfall potential, and could that get us a close starting point for a regional curve? So what we ended up doing last week is we looked at a rainfall potential in Orange County, California, based on how much rainfall they have, and then another mini regional curve we created, and we plotted these things. So this is kind of a general process that we look at on streams. But if we don't have that, can we predict that based off of any one parameter alone? And years ago, when we went up to Dublin Gulch in Mayo, Yukon, we happened to compare a regional curve to a regional curve that was created in California Park a couple weeks earlier. And really, it's just a matter that we were in one region and we wanted to use the same Excel spreadsheet next region. But they happened to be, after we did the conversion, they had about the exact same inches of rainfall per year. And we created the same curve to the point where we thought we had an error. And we're trying to look at it. And then we converted millimeters of rainfall to inches and found out, wow, we have about the same inches. So it started running us to this theory of, well, maybe rainfall is a lot bigger predictor than we thought. Maybe we thought that all these other things had a huge influence on it. And maybe a lot of the aspects of vegetation are related to rainfall. Maybe a lot of the aspects of runoff are related to the overall rainfall. So we've been plotting this over the last 15 years. And, we're in the process of Ryan Bard is trying to publish this for his master's thesis. And we've probably been a little slow in publishing it, but it's been a lot of fun collecting the data. What we've come up with is this pretty simple relationship that says you can take that C for the watershed response factor, and to get you a starting point on rivers, it almost seems like you just take the total annual precip, multiply it by a third, and then just add a 1.5 constant to it, and that's going to get you in the right ballpark for starting to predict cross-sectional areas. Now, obviously, that assumes that the bank full velocities of streams are fairly consistent, which is an assumption that we use often, but there is some error still associated with that. So what this looks like in using this tool in some place like Canada is I'm just going to use Alberta because we had talked about a project that Brad and I worked on years ago in Medicine Hat. So if we look at Alberta, we can have a rainfall distribution for Alberta. And with this rainfall distribution in Alberta, we could just look at it wherever we're at there in Alberta. It's going to tell us how many millimeters of precip we have a year. So we can use that equation and say, okay, well, our annual precip is 350 millimeters. So that's about 14 inches. That means we'd have a watershed coefficient of 6.1. So if we assume a exponent to the watershed of 0.67, which is something that we had discussed before, and if anybody has heard this for the first time, I can spend more time discussing why we made that assumption later. So if we do that, we can get to a cross-sectional area, and based on a drainage area of 2 square miles, we'll predict that we have about a 9.5 square foot cross-sectional area, which is a really neat starting point. It's wrong. I mean, it's going to be the wrong value, but it gets you in the right ballpark. And what we're seeing is within 50% to 200%, so it gets you a starting point for a reference. The next step is we have to have some sort of regional reference with the depth ratio based on slope, valley type, regional rainfall, and the valley slope as well. So what that looks like is we say something like, well, I'm looking for a width to depth ratio, reference width to depth ratio for a 1% slope with 18 inches of rainfall a year, a type 3 valley in Wyoming. And the rainfall actually plays a role in finding your width to depth ratios as well, which is pretty easy if you've had anybody that worked in an arid area or a humid area. You'll know that if you're in North Carolina with 50 inches of rainfall a year, your vegetation grows a lot quicker. When you're in Wyoming with 18 inches of rainfall a year, you're not going to see vegetation grow. So you're going to expect a different width to depth ratio in Wyoming, a larger width to depth ratio than where you have better rainfall in Alabama or North Carolina, which would be a lot narrower because of the impact of vegetation, as well as valley confinements. So we have a lot of these reference width to depth ratios that are kind of vaguely published in information. It's not well published, but you know, if I'm working on a project, somebody's gonna say, hey, what do you think the width to depth ratio should be for this? And we'll ask some questions and we'll get back. So one of the keys of figuring this out is trying to figure out regressions to that can be simplified for figuring out width to depth ratios based on parameters, but are still useful. So if we can't find a width to depth ratio, we know that we probably don't want a width to depth ratio, as Brad was saying, an over wide system of 40, because it's not going to be stable on most systems unless we move to DAs, which is a little bit different story. But yet, how can we put that together in a tool that's digestible to people? So right now, the second step is to use a width to depth ratio from a reference. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to completely collect a reference for each. It means that you're finding cross sections on the reference. And a lot of times, what we'll use to get these reference width to depth ratios are mini regional curves, and we'll look at the cross sections that we use for those mini regional curves. And even though we don't have the full morphology of every stream, we have enough to have reference width to depth ratios that were stable or not. So then step 3 is simply just using width is equal to square root of area times width to depth ratio. And that is derived from an area is equal to your depth times width. Therefore, your width is equal to your area divided by depth. And then your depth is also equal to your width divided by your width to depth ratio. So what that means in this example is that we'd have a width of a channel that should be about 14 feet. So if Brad says that the stream out there as it is sitting at 38 feet, then that would be a point where we should reassess that and say, okay, well, we're not going to give you as many credits for that area because it's already over wide. So we're going to ding you some points from it because it's already unstable. And I think that's the concept of where we might go with that. So, and this who cares is something that I hope Brad can add some more into based on these ideas. So we have, we have this idea of a cross-sectional of a surface area. So this is a project that we're looking at in Alabama, and it was a mining site, and you have a creek that runs through the middle of these mines because there used to be a creek and they just excavated out all the material, and now it's a big a pond. Well, we know that that's a major impact, and it's something that you'd be in violation for in the United States. But in some places where they're doing habitat compensation, you can actually use a big pond as habitat compensation, even though that it's over wide or that it doesn't really make sense. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Many times we don't want to make a river and stream into a lake or pond. And then how can we look at what the habitat compensation equivalency would be? So for this example, one thing that I had thought is, let's say you need 2 acres of habitat compensation on this stream in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and that equivalent with a 14-foot wide channel would be about 6,000 linear feet of stream. If that 6,000 linear feet of stream would cost $300, then you'd be talking about a project that's going to cost you about $1.8 million. Whereas a 2-acre habitat compensation at 0.75 feet on average, so an average 9-inch depth, so just grading a pond and grading it out to be average 9 inches of depth of grading, it would cost you about, at $20 a yard, it would cost you about $50,000. So it's just a significant difference in cost and a significant difference in function between the different types of habitat compensation for the same area. And so that's kind of the thoughts that I wanted to use as an example today. I don't know, Brad, is there things that you want to add on? Are there questions, concerns that you want to?
No, can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
Basically, you're saying the width, so that formula under the third bullet is really the formula that I need. Although you've put the 9.5 square feet was calculated elsewhere, correct?
Yeah, the 9.5 square feet would come from calculating the cross-sectional area from the regional curve. So what we'll end up doing for the, and this is what you'd said you wanted by early September. So what we'll end up doing is I'll put together a small Word document that actually creates this, and then we're going to look at regressions for width to depth ratios based on slope and and precip as well. So
that's perfect. Just because, like I said, our problem here is that so many of the streams are over widened. So there's an overcalculation of the existing habitat versus the restored habitat. So when you take a stream that's 20 feet wide and you build it correctly and it's only 10 feet wide, well, suddenly you have the habitat area, but you haven't really have the habitat. You've actually improved it because you've got all these fish habitat features included, and it actually has some depth, appropriate depth now, as opposed to being a mile wide and an inch deep, which is part of the problem with a lot of urban streams. So thank you. That's perfect.
And we get to the same thing, like right now in California, we're out trying to put together the first stream mitigation bank for California. Most of them have been wetland banks to date, even if they've been done on streams. And I'm out here with Lee Forbes and Kenny Carruthers this week, and we're trying to set up this bank near Pass Lake Robles. And the concern that we have is you have two channels because something's over wide. And a lot of people want to count both channels as jurisdictional, even though it's an over wide system. So this kind of runs that same idea. You get super over wide and you have a whole bunch of channels you're counting, or a big cross-sectional area. So I think even though a lot of this is kind of more Canadian in general, it has a lot of relevancy to some of the issues we have in the States right now as well. So.
And again, Dave, you're right. I mean, does it have to be accurate? No, but if it winds up having you go from 20 feet to 10 feet, then, whether it's 9 feet or 11 feet or 12 feet or 8 feet, it's a whole lot better than running it off of 20 feet. So, is it going to be perfect? No, but it's going to be a whole lot more accurate than running off of, a badly over widened channel. So that's perfect. Thank you.
Any other thoughts from anybody before we close for the day? All right. So I'll stay on the line. If anybody has any things that you want to add that you did kind of want to add to the group or whatever, if you have other things you want to discuss, I'll hang up when the last person gets off the line. But I appreciate everybody having some time today, and thankful for all of you guys. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dave. I'm going because I need to talk to you about Alabama and stuff.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Hey, you bet, Alan.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, Bissett.
Hey, did you get a chance to review Tobacco Creek from last week?
I did. Yeah, I reviewed it last. I reviewed it last night. I'm going to try to get some line work out to you today, so you can do a concept design through that one section. So, did you get the LiDAR loaded with Alex for it?
Yeah, I found some LiDAR.
Good. So then I'll give you an alignment and then a rough alignment, and then you can lay it out with pools and curves and tangents and stuff.
So that you'll send that out later today, or?
Yeah, I'll probably send it out this morning here in the next hour. So.
Okay.
And then I gave you another thing to do this morning as well from Mojave River.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, so that can be done, assuming, I figured you'd probably have more time than Mason does, but I copied both of these because you've both been involved with it so far. So.
Yeah, okay. And
then we'll have data tonight for the stuff that we're doing in here in Pass Lake Robles. And I'll probably copy both you and Luis on that, and then whoever has time can work it up for us tomorrow.
Is this the Vogel project?
That's the Vogel project.
Okay. All right, sounds good, Dave.
All right. Well, hey,
keep in touch. Yeah, thanks. You too.
Bye.
See ya.
All right. All right, Luis, are you on the line to talk about Border Creek and the Alabama stuff, or do you have other things today? Or maybe he's not even on the line. Okay, very good. All right, let's go, Brad. I think
he's not there.
I don't think he is. He didn't respond. So.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, I didn't know whether he had his microphone off, and so he just wasn't.
Yeah.
You can see the attendees anyway. So we got better, Luis and I working towards the second half of the week. It's just he needs to communicate more, and I need to communicate more. For example, Dave, I didn't even have his phone number. Like his email address doesn't even have his phone number. So he's doing all this technical work for me. I wound up phoning Greg and Andrea to get, you know, a phone number so I can talk to him to try and guide him through this stuff. So it's just a case of he just tends to go off and feed it to you, you know, and then it's like, and we just go through several iterations. So it's just better communication is the big issue.
Okay.
How the other thing I don't know, and I haven't worked enough with him yet to figure it out, is do you have a sense of, am I losing stuff? Is his English good, bad, medium? I mean, I've never, you know, obviously when he writes stuff, it's pretty bad, but I'm assuming his verbal skills are better than his writing skills. Does he understand most stuff?
Yeah, he does. The things that he doesn't understand is usually related to some of the more technical jargon because he's only been in the field for a year.
Okay,
So,
got it.
Yeah, so in general, and he does speak. I think he's not on the line, so he can correct me if he wants to. But I think he speaks 4 or 5 languages in general. So whenever you speak multiple languages, sometimes there's a little bit of communication that comes up because some words are shared between languages with slightly different meanings. So that's definitely a little bit of the issue. But in general, I haven't found issues with him from a verbal communication thing. Written, he does have a lot of room for improvement. So.
Well, and I'm not worried about his writing. I mean, that's not my shtick, you know. I mean, right now we're just using him to do stuff, but I'm struggling, you know, because basically it takes him longer to do this stuff than Greg and Andrea because he doesn't really understand.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
and again, Dave, I'm happy to work with him, but it's just rather than just doing stuff and, you know, it's like he's throwing darts at the wall, hoping something hits, you know, and it's like, no, let's make sure we're clear what we're trying to do. And I'll talk to him myself and say, look, Luis, you know, communicate. That's how we're going to get through this, is not by just sending me stuff, because every time he sends stuff, I mean, he spends a bunch of time doing it, and then I spend a bunch of time correcting it, and then he does it again, and then we just go round and round and round. And I think we could cut the iterations in half if we were communicating better between. So that's what I'll try and work on with him. Okay.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. It's always, you know, that's always the hard thing, because it does sometimes take a while for us to kind of communicate with the interns that come from so many different locations. But I think he has so much value in what he adds to the group. Just he has a little bit different way of thinking than a lot of the interns have. So it's just a matter of getting him to a point where he can comprehend what we want done. So
yeah, so I'll keep plugging away with him. I'm just trying to figure it out now, and I'm starting to figure out what the issues are. So it's just a case of, I mean, he tries so hard to please me, but it's like, no, Luis, let's talk and make sure we understand it before we start doing it. So anyway, so that was the one thing. The other thing is, Dave, of all the 3 reports that we've got out there, I think the one I'd like to advance more is the geomorphic report. And since you've got the field work done and blah, blah, blah. So can I rough out an outline and then have you take a kick at the can, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, that sounds great, man. Yeah, okay. So if you have time this week to do an outline, then I can just start adding figures and.
Well, and you can tell me whether I'm wrong or not, but you know, basically let's agree on an outline, and then let's start plugging it. And if Luis can do some of the figures and Andrea and Greg can do some of the writing, you know, I mean, I don't really care. Okay.
Good.
Okay, the other one that I'd like to get done this week is, you know, you sent me the big table with all the cost estimates for the work on Mortar Creek, and I was hoping that we could advance a figure that shows basically on the base map that we've got for the Elmore property. You know, basically I talked about putting a tone for the different types of treatments that you wanted to do. Some of it was just cutting a floodplain bench. Some of it was, you know, just doing stabilization of the riparian area. Some was doing nothing. You know, there was a brief section in there that you weren't going to do anything. Anyway, I'd like to get that part moving, because that's, you know, to some extent, that's kind of the results of the geomorphic assessment. But I think I'd like to begin to feed it into the client, you know, sort of sooner than later, because they're going to be shocked at how much we believe there needs to be work done on the channel. So that's my big concern.
Yeah, no, and we can work on that. I'll probably get started tomorrow night.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that's great. So if we could start and do that, that would be really good. The other thing is the issue of the references for the river shared site. I mean, Truman raised the issue. I raised the issue earlier, and so nobody said anything. So, but so are you okay if we just get Sarah to start typing up the references so we can put them in?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's great.
Yeah, I think that's good stuff. I mean, it's miserable work for her, but it's work for her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's work for her, and I mean, she's back in school right now, so for her to have some kind of simple work that she can just fill in is probably good.
Okay.
And I mean, she wants to be doing nonprofit stuff. I mean, this is an amazing opportunity for her. So she's been incredibly positive about. I mean, she's never once said, "Wow, that's crappy work" to me yet. So.
No, and she's been really good to work with, and I'm and again I will the next step now that we've got the conference over with and we're working on the website is the bylaws, Dave, which is a good experience for her to go through as well. So I'm going to start working the bylaws next. And
then I mean, really, our next big conference and we had kind of a run and didn't have to do a whole lot for this one, and it ended up being a little bit of a bust. But the next conference will be next November. So it's almost a year away right now. I mean, we could do another one before that, but that's kind of what I'm looking at. Like if we're ready for the National Stream Mitigation Conference next year, that's pretty good. So
yeah, I mean, it was kind of George had a thought and it was worth trying, and it kind of lit a bit of a fire under our asses, and together on some stuff. So we built some rapport within the group, and so I think there's value there. So I think we'll just keep moving. So right now I'm going to focus on the website with Truman and basically start working on the bylaws. Now, you said we could get access. Paula was going to send us bylaws from her organization.
Yeah, and we also have let me get the let's see. I'll put a note on here. I'm going to send to Paula and John Giardango, and they have bylaws for both of their nonprofits. And Alan Walker was on the line today. Alan's actually might even be better to get the bylaws from than Paula, but I'll copy him as well. So.
Yeah. Anyway, if you could send them to us, then I basically what I was going to do, I was going to have George and me and Sarah work on that. I'm trying to go easy on your treasurer guy because I don't want to overwhelm him with stuff. But
yeah,
but it's interesting, Dave. He adds value because again he comes without a whole lot of preconceived notions, and I find his input quite interesting.
Yeah. No, I have no doubt that Bruce will always find value. It's never going to be exactly what you expect.
No, but it's good. Well, it's good to hear somebody else's perspective, though. So I think that's been good. So okay, well, I'll get going on that stuff. So, so do you want to talk about this other request that's come from? I guess it's a different project manager at TTL who's running this, right? It's not Cheryl Reeves.
Yeah, it is. It's a different. Well, I think Cheryl's still in charge, but Cheryl's in charge of the other one. And Chris Terrell is kind of the guy running the show, or was, and even in the background, Chris is still working on it a fair amount, even though there's been some sort of an outfall with Chris. But this is coming from, I'm trying to see what his name was, just putting it up, Scott. So I mean, basically the big thought is I'm actually fine with, I talked to him on the phone and I said, this is the deal. I said, we don't want to do a project for you. I said, but if we can work alongside of you guys and help support you, kind of like we did at Mortar Creek, and maybe even support you more and do a little bit less, I said, we'd probably be interested in it. I said, but if you just want to pass on the project and have us do it, I said, I'm not sure that that's exactly what either Brad or I will want right now.
So what was his response?
He said that's what he would prefer, is that we kind of come alongside of them and that they can help with field work and that everything else. And I said, let's talk to Brad and see what Brad thinks. So, I mean, the question is, do you want to take on, I mean, if it wasn't just upstream, I probably would have said no anyways. But when he said it was just right upstream, I was like, you kind of know the system. So
Yeah, I didn't even know exactly where it was, but yeah, so it's fine. I guess the only thing we need to do is we need to get a contract in place again between TTL and Five Smooth Stones. So
yeah.
can you get him, can you send him an email and say that Brad will be PMing this for Five Smooth Stones and I'll handle the technical stuff, something like that?
Yep, that's exactly what I'll send him. I wanted to make sure it's okay with you before I said that. I didn't want
Yeah,
to.
no, it's good. My work with DFO is kind of winding down, and it's so similar, Dave. And I think a lot of the work that we've done we have to be a little bit careful because we can't, reuse work that Elmore paid for, but we can certainly use it indirectly to, expedite this. But
Yeah.
so that would yeah, I'm happy to, because again, it's work for Greg and Andrea and Luis and all these guys, and I'm happy to help them get that work if that helps them. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm staying at a hotel right now, and the person before me had had an alarm on, so it just went off.
Oh yeah, no, I've had that happen too. The alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and I'm going, great. The last person had a flight to catch, and they set the alarm and left it.
Yeah, well, at least it wasn't. I guess it wasn't bad. That's good.
So you're in California now, are you?
I am. Yeah. We're in Paso Robles right now. So.
So did you fly over?
I did. Yeah.
How are the flights?
This time it wasn't bad. So, I came out last Monday to work, and then Lisette's wife finally came over from Sri Lanka, and his parents were in town. They invited us on the weekend to have a Sri Lankan feast. They wanted to kind of show the kids Sri Lankan food and just kind of show their appreciation towards us. And they invited us for this week, and I had already planned on being there. So I worked with Lee. I said, Lee, I really want to fly home for the weekend, and then I'll come back out. So that's what I did. I just flew home for the weekend, which I normally would just stay out. But and when I flew back out, I flew through Phoenix to San Luis Obispo, and there wasn't many people on that flight at all. The other flights I had into LA were completely packed, but this one didn't have many people. But I always just sleep on a plane anyway, so it's not like I'm doing much talking to people or anything. I just keep my mask on and sleep. So
yeah, no, that's good. Okay, so I mean, my plan is it okay? My plan is to kind of use Greg and Andrea and Luis to try and do this work.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's exactly what I was thinking too.
Okay. Do you have an idea in terms of, how you like to split it between Greg and Andrea and Luis? Andrea has been doing a lot of back checking on Luis because he misses stuff. Again, doesn't have a long background of doing water resources stuff. So his Manning's equation on those flood models that Andrea had built was basically, or I don't know whether Luis may have built them, but anyway, it was out by a factor of 10 on the Mannings. So it was pretty goofy, and she spotted it, fortunately, to kind of clarify what was going on. But so how do I split the work? Do I just ask them availability, or, I mean, obviously I'm using Luis to do some of the drafting stuff, which is helpful, I mean,
I think in general, we just have a, you just figure you're going to have Greg and Andrew and I work on the stuff, and then Luis is going to be fit in where he has availability and where he has time.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I've been using it anyways. And even with Luis, when Greg and Andrew got involved, I said, hey, I'm going to send Luis over. You guys can work on this and stuff. It's good work to be doing. And, we really want you working with Luis if possible. And they're tickled to do so. So.
Okay, that's fine.
But yeah, there's a number of things that he'll miss right now, but he misses a lot less than he did a year ago, so that's good.
Yeah, no, he's a very bright guy. It's just like I said, and I think to some extent it's his sense of urgency to please, as opposed to let's get it right and then do it. You know what I mean? As opposed, I don't like doing 6 iterations to get something right, Dave. It's just not. It's frustrating for me, and it's just some of it's foolish stuff that he's slips through because he doesn't understand. So anyway, that's fine. I'll try to work with Greg and Andrea on that stuff with him. I think it would be good for him to spend as much time as possible with them so that he can pick up on it. I mean, like the last one, for example, he sent me the last figure, the cross section. It was great, but it was to scale, right? Like, I mean, the vertical scale was exaggerated, but it was to scale. But then he had an arrow and he said approximately 15 to 20 feet. And I'm going, well, Luis, why do you have that arrow on when we're on the scale background? It's not approximate anything. I can scale it off exactly. And then things like when I asked him to draw in the new cross section, the one time he put the proposed cross section 2 feet below the existing invert, and the next time it came back 2 feet above the existing invert, and I'd drawn it so that the invert of the new channel matched the invert of the old channel, because I don't want to be backing water up and I don't want to create issues. I said, Luis, you got to look carefully at this stuff. I mean, when I draw stuff, I want you to draw it exactly as, because I'd marked it up and sent it to him. And then he didn't even do what I, drawn and sent to him. It's like, pay attention, like it matters.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's fine. I'll work with him on that. So get me in touch with the PM from TTL. I'll work with Greg and Andrea. I'll try to bang out an outline. And the reason, Dave, why I'm not moving forward with any reports except the geomorphic one is because basically what we're trying to do is I'm trying to get US EPA to agree that we don't have to do this floodplain connectivity for the entire length, because there's sections where we're not doing anything and we're not trying to encourage floodplain connectivity. So I don't want to be analyzing stuff that doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it seems like it should be a part of the geomorphic assessment.
Well, or even if it's written as a separate report, but it's just only for certain reaches. Is that an issue? And so I'm not going to talk about the other ones because we're not doing anything to the channel. I mean, why do a report on, encouraging floodplain connectivity when we're not doing anything to encourage floodplain connectivity? In fact, in most of Zone 2, we don't want floodplain connectivity.
That's right. That's right.
So anyway, so I'm looking for a map. I'll send the base map over for Elmore. We've got sort of ones that are pretty good that we're working off of now with zones 1, 2, and 3. 3 is broken into 3A and 3B. I'll send that. And basically, so what I'm looking for is a tone on the channel and basically typical cross sections for the typical treatments that you want to do. I don't know whether there's 3 or 4 types that you were planning on doing, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. And
okay.
I'll probably, yeah. And if I have that back to you on Wednesday morning, do you need it for Thursday or do you need it for do you need it for Wednesday? Well,
technically, I want to show it to the client before I give it to US EPA.
Yeah.
We've actually agreed to basically what we're doing is I like Chris, but it's interesting because we got into a little bit of trouble on this because that thing where I just showed the ponds being connected, like I basically that upstream of the dam, I suggested we connect all of those 5 ponds.
Yeah.
Basically, when they got me involved, my issue was trying to resolve the issues of the ponds. And I kept telling Chris, I said, Chris, you're in charge of the wetlands. I'm just doing the ponds. Well, they've moved forward with this concept without Chris ever looking at what I'd done. And there was a couple of places where we would have had to excavate wetlands out in order to, because I just drew lines, Dave. I was just trying to give them an idea. And I said, Dave, I said, Chris, if you look at this pond, I said, look, there's a whole bunch of trees that are growing there now. And under the figure that I showed, they're underwater. I said, I was just trying to show conceptually what we wanted to do, not exactly. I said, you're the wetland guy. You need to look at this and tell me, if you were going to try and do wetland restoration, how would you change the outline? And so Dave Coffrin, who's the GIS guy, said, yeah, he said, we shouldn't be digging those trees out. We should just go around them. And so Chris is kind of reluctantly, so my point is, I'm saying, guys, this is the time to refine our concept plan and get it more accurate to what we need to do. And one of those refinements that I wanted from you was whether you felt safe about, that upper pond being 10 feet lower than the creek. And you seem to be okay. And we've got lots of fill material coming out of the embankments in the ponds that we can pack along the right bank of that stream to give us a really good buffer so it won't cut through. And so that was one of the refinements. But I said, guys, I said to Chris Terrell, I said, Chris, this is the time for you to really look at the wetlands in Zone 2. and whether the outline that I proposed. And so Dave Coffrin's looked at it and he said, you know, based on the material that we're taking those embankments out, he said, we probably got enough material to fill that one pond that basically has vegetation growing out on a couple of peninsulas out into the middle of it. So I said, then let's do that. And, you know, and then we'll wind up with even more wetland, and that should make EPA even happier, you know? And he said, well, we only have to give them exactly what we have to give them. And I'm going, yeah, but you know, I said, they still haven't decided whether they want to take the impacts based on 2013 or 2007. I said, if you just do the bare minimum of 2013, they may still push back. I said, if we throw in a little extra, maybe they won't question and force Elmore to go back to 2007. I said, let's just give them a little bit extra and say, here, we're trying to do the right thing. Help us out here, you know? So Chris has agreed to rework the RAP assessment numbers based on new acreages, based on cut fill volumes that Coffrin's doing on the ponds. So overall, I think it's going to be a much better sort of clear concept plan that we're going to give to, and we're gunning for that. Sorry, this was a long conversation to get. So we want that available to basically give it to, I think it's by the 11th is when we're supposed to give it to them, but I'll confirm when I need this by, because I'd like to get it in front of the client first, and I'll probably change the figure that I give to US EPA, Dave, and just basically have the section where we're doing any kind of work on the channel, and then the sections where we're not doing any work on the channel. I don't think EPA needs to know all the details. Maybe they do. I don't know. I'll figure that out. But
Do you want us to kind of draft this up ourselves, or just pass the stuff over for Coffrin to draft up? What's your preference?
Either one. I mean, if you guys can draft it, he's got lots of work to do. So basically I'm giving you the base maps. If you can work on them, just do them. I'd rather, you know, whatever, if it's work for you, take it. You want to do it, do it.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll see if it's something that Luis wants to do. I'd prefer not to, but
yeah, that's fine. And I mean, I work well with Coffrin, but if you're trying to funnel work to Luis, I'm happy to do it with him.
Sounds good.
Okay, so that's kind of it. I'll clarify the dates. It's not going to be this Wednesday, Dave, so don't get too panic stricken.
Okay.
Okay, that's it for me, I think.
I'm going to try to hit it anyways. I just had on my schedule to start working on tomorrow night after I get back from the field, and I want to kind of get my thoughts out there so that at least we're circulating it. So it will be circulated at least at the KMZ on Wednesday, unless I
so the other thing is basically, you know, some of the stuff for River Shared's costing more money, but so I sent you the check, so we should have lots of money to be able to operate this for a while, Dave.
Okay, cool. Hey, I really appreciate that. I wasn't sure how we were going to kind of move forward, but that was very kind of you to kind of write a check.
Well, what it does, Dave, is it buys us some time, you know, while we try and figure out funding and all that kind of stuff and get membership numbers and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't want anybody to be, I mean, you know, I didn't want you funding everything. I mean, it's not fair, you know, so anyway.
So, and we should be with the project in South Dakota. Man, it's such a blessing, Brad. I mean, I have 25 people that have all offered to give about 8 hours a piece on this project.
That's great.
And so, you know, part of it is me trying to manage it to make sure that people have productive things that they're giving time towards. But that's still pretty amazing to me. And they're all willing to kind of give it back. So we're working with Dave Geenan to figure out how we do it, whether we pay people and then just allow them to donate it back, or if we can just accept an invoice and use that invoice for the grant and then never even pay the people, and that's fine too. So Dave's figuring that out. I said, Dave, I trust you, man. I said, but I don't understand any of this stuff. I said, so as long as you feel comfortable about it, then I'm going to be okay with it. So.
Yeah, you just have to be careful because we don't want to lose our charitable status, Dave. So basically, you know, the idea is that people need to get paid, but they can, you know, and whether we write the check and they write a check back, or whether we just deduct some off of it and acknowledge it as part of it as a donation, that's fine. But anyway, when do you go out to the site?
We go out on the 18th of September.
It's a beautiful spot, Dave. It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah,
I was gonna say I'm looking forward to it, and just kind of one of those what a neat neat concept that just kind of came up by chance. So I'm kind of excited on how this might work, for example, for some future things.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
So Margaret and I drove down when we lived in Saskatchewan. We went down to the Black Hills for a long weekend, and it was a long drive, but it's a really pretty part of the world. And I was glad I went down and saw Needles Highway and Spearfish Canyon. And I mean, it's just some gorgeous countryside. That's all.
That's cool. That's cool. No, I look forward to it. I don't think I've ever been through Spearfish before. I think I've been close by, but I think you have to go like the road that takes you. I've been down through South Dakota before to go up to Saskatchewan once, but the road that takes me back to Denver, you have to go off the side to get to Spearfish. So I don't think I've actually been there. So.
Yeah, it's kind of a road to nowhere, but it's very, very pretty. So that's great, Dave. Anyway, thank you. So the biggest thing for right now is working on these this treatments for the mainstone mortar and getting me in touch with the PM from TTL. So and you think Cheryl's still involved in this? Is that the case?
Yeah, I think that I believe that this new guy, I just forgot his name again.
Yeah, that's all right.
This new guy, Scott, I think he's basically, I think this Cindy lady is
Cindy House Pierce.
Yeah. So I think Cheryl is actually Cindy's boss.
Yeah, Cheryl's kind of got a bunch of them. Cindy's an ex-Corps person that they've hired.
Okay.
So she's the
ex-Corps person. It's not. Cheryl's not the ex-Corps person.
Yeah. So Cindy's she's kind of retired. She doesn't seem to work super hard.
Yeah. Okay. So then never mind. Cindy's over both of these, and then I guess Cheryl's. So I don't know if Cheryl will be involved in this one or not.
Okay. Well, we'll see what's going on. But anyway, so I'll shepherd that along as best I can once I figure out exactly. So basically, my understanding is that the Mortar Creek did it jump on its own, or did they force it into an alternate route?
I think on this one they just forced it into an alternate route.
And so they want that to be adopted by EPA as the new alignment. Is that what they're trying to sell?
Right now, they're just. I think TTL just EPA has given them a violation, and right here this discoloration is where the existing channel is at. So it's kind of the same concept as what was done before, where they kind of pushed it out to the side. But this one, it looks like most of the water is still flowing right through this pond here and not going through this side channel. So in some ways, this is actually more of an impact than downstream because it looks like all of Mortar Creek is just going through there in this section up here. So.
Okay, well, I'll try and get clarity in terms of exactly what the issue is and what they've been charged with and what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, that's what I don't quite understand yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And basically, they're looking for a proposal for the conceptual restoration plan and would like your input, specifically know the level of detailed effort that would be required for this. So I'll put you in contact with him and just
Scott.
say, hey, Brad would be working with us, and he'll kind of direct efforts for 5 smooth stones, and I'll be involved to help direct field activities.
And for right now, Dave, you're happy to work through TTL because Elmore finally wanted to cut TTL out of the mix and not have them do markup. But for right now, I guess we'll just work for TTL, right?
Yeah, just work for TTL and just you can tell them the same thing because they're gonna know it anyways. But you can say, hey, if the client comes back and wants to, we can bill them directly. But in general, they don't pay as slow as some clients do, so they're fine.
They're okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I just didn't know what was going on, but I was a little surprised to find out they were marking us up 15%. TTL was.
Yeah. We've had some people that mark us up at 20% that I know of.
Holy crap!
Yeah, that's not too surprising. But I mean, normal you expect kind of 8 to 10%. So
yeah. Well, we'll see. And again, it's their business with their client. I don't need to, I don't need to question it. I mean, it's just that it's a, I mean, by the time all the markups are done, TTL was paying a lot of money. On the other hand, TTL, to their credit, because they were marking us up 15%, they were paying us immediately and waiting for the money from TTL or from Elmore. So
okay. Yeah.
that was one of the reasons why they charged it more, is that we were going to get paid whether they got paid or not.
Yeah.
They weren't holding our invoice till they got paid. So that was what the 5% was going towards, was paying the surety that we were going to get paid. So I'll try to get that clear with him in terms of what the deal is on that. It's the end of the month, so I'll work with Abby on getting the invoices out to Elmore. Is that okay?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Okay.
And I think she's right at I think she has her invoicing ready, so she was going to be doing invoicing today. So just shoot her a email or a text and say, hey, is there a time that we can discuss invoicing as needed?
Yep.
And then I think we didn't have a whole lot of extra stuff yet from Greg and Andrea, so they didn't send us anything yet, so we haven't seen that, but I'm guessing they'll send us the next day, and so will Louise.
Okay. And does Abby, like, did she cut it off on, like, today's the 31st, or did she cut it off on a whole week, like last Friday?
We always cut off our stuff on the 25th of the month, just so that we have that advance. But then it really just depends on when our subcontractors get in stuff. So if we get to a point, we've told our subcontractors we invoice in the first of the month. So if we get to the point where they don't get us something, then it just waits a month until the next time. And sometimes they get lucky because Abby didn't get around to it yet, so then we invoice on the second or third or fourth month. So
Okay.
So that's kind of how it goes. But I
Okay,
would expect that Greg and Andrea will have a fairly significant invoice for this month, and I'll expect that Luis will have a significant invoice. Now, Luis, we still bill him we bill him as our employee on this bill, kind of on that level, which doesn't really make a huge difference. But if there's hours we don't want to bill for, as a subcontractor, he bills us at a very low bill rate, which is really simple. Then, but then you basically charge for the hours and do a markup. But how we've been billing him to date, we've been billing him kind of more like an employee. So we have a bigger markup on him, but then we just don't bill him for a lot of his hours because there's things that are not really worthwhile. But it seems to work better to bill the client at $75 an hour for less hours when he's not being efficient than $22 an hour for all the hours, because then they're like, well, why do you spend so many hours on it? Like, well, it's only $22 an hour.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
So
yeah. So yeah, I'll work with Abby, because basically what we need to do is we need to show no markups in these invoices. So, if Greg is billing out at 110, then, and then put the markup on him, show him as 5, just show him at whatever the final is with the markup. You know what I mean? Don't show the markups, because that's what they don't want to see. So that's good. Okay, I'm good. I'll reach out to Abby and get that clarified in terms of schedules, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Yeah, all right. Hey, thanks a lot, Brad.
When you heading home, Dave?
Thursday.
Okay. Have a safe trip. Okay.
Yeah, and then we're gonna, I guess, we'll be home for about a week, and then we go on a big driving tour. So after South Dakota work, we're gonna drive to Idaho to work on 2 projects, drive to Washington, drive to California to work on a couple projects, and then drive to Nevada to work on some projects. So we just Lee has a bunch of projects he wanted me to look at, but because of the pandemic, they've all been kind of smacked up. And I told him, I said, Lee, I don't really want to be traveling 4 weeks in a row and flying to places. I said, I'm willing to do this if you're okay with me just driving and taking my family. So that's what we're going to be doing. So
you're just loading everybody in the Suburban and going?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So you taking the trailer? Or you taking the trailer?
Abby doesn't want to take the trailer, and I wanted to. I thought that sounded romantic, but she didn't like the idea of it. So we're just going to stay in hotels as we go. But we're going to go up like I said, we have a project in Seattle area that they want me to look at for an urban stream restoration project there. But then we'll go from Seattle down the Pacific Coast highway and stuff, which would be pretty cool. So.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Dave, I've done that before, but the drive through Washington sucks. The drive through, because it's not out at the coast, but the drive Oregon is phenomenal. So
stay on the interstate until we get to Oregon.
Well, basically, the highway in Washington doesn't run along the coast. It's not out at the coast at all.
Oh, okay.
So there's no way to, you can take side roads to get out to the coast, but Margaret and I drove out. That was the whole idea, was to drive down the Pacific coast, and we got to Washington, and when we're driving through like spruce forest, and we get to Oregon, and then they weave the highway goes out to the coast, and Oregon's the beautiful drive. I was like blown away. It was by far the best scenery we saw on the whole trip, all the way down to San Francisco.
Good. Well, then that's what we'll make a point to do then.
So Oregon's fantastic. You'll love it. It's wonderful, wonderful views.
So what about the drive from San Francisco down? Was that pretty neat, or would you say don't worry too much about that, just get to where you need to go from there?
No, it's worth going, because you drive. A Big Sur goes south from San Francisco down to, we got down as far as Carmel.
Yeah.
In Carmel, and then we basically cut up on a long angle and went back up to Saskatchewan. So if you can get down to Carmel and Monterey, it's really fantastic.
Cool. Yeah, that's what we'll try to do. We'll just do Oregon to Carmel then.
Yeah.
And we have this project in Paso Robles, and that's Abby's favorite wine region, so she's excited about that. So
cool. So whereabouts? You're in Orange County. That's back where we did all that work with Kuykendall.
Yeah. So we did. That's right. So we were in Orange County for the other stuff, but right now we're in Paso Robles, which is up near the center of the state in the wine regions. So, so we have 4 projects that we're working on over here right now. But the one that I'm at here, but last week I was down in Orange County. Actually went right by Cahoon Pass that we did work on, and then went right by the stuff that we did with Omar. If you remember.
Yep. I remember Omar.
So, yeah, I'm guessing you've lost contact with Kuykendall.
Yeah, they fired him shortly after we disconnected. They got rid of him.
Yeah, I figured they.
Although with a name like that, he's probably pretty easy to find. But he was a nice guy, I really felt they really screwed him over.
Yeah, I really appreciated working with him too.
And Dave, I don't know, there's just, the company's become really mean and greedy over the years.
Yeah, well, it was just different from the time that I got hired till the time that I left too. Which was surprising to me. So it's kind
of. It's only gotten worse.
Yeah.
So, anyway, thanks, man. Take care.
Have a great day.
Bye.